My name is Sarah, and I am 22 years old. As I type this on my scratched laptop, sitting on the floor of my tiny apartment in Portland, Oregon, I can hear my upstairs neighbor dragging furniture around again. It is Thursday, 3 in the morning, and she has apparently decided this is the perfect time to rearrange her living room. I do not complain anymore. I learned that complaining about noise when you live in a $1,200 a month apartment building is like complaining about rain in Oregon. Completely useless. I grew up in Beaverton, a prosperous suburb of Portland, where houses have manicured lawns and 3-car garages. My parents, Robert and Linda Mitchell, always prided themselves on being financially responsible. Dad worked as a senior accountant at Nike headquarters, and Mom managed a dental practice downtown. They drove matching Honda Accords, never missed a mortgage payment, and had enough saved for retirement by the time they turned 50. The irony is not lost on me that the people who taught me about financial responsibility are the same ones who created the most financially irresponsible situation of my life. But I am getting ahead of myself. When I turned 16, most of my friends got cars for their birthdays. Jessica Chen got a brand new Toyota Camry with a red bow on top, parked in her driveway like something out of a commercial. Marcus Williams received his dad's old BMW, which was still nicer than anything I had ever been inside. My birthday gift was different. My parents sat me down at our kitchen table, the one with the fake marble top that Mom had picked out from a furniture catalog, and Dad slid a manila folder across to me. Inside was a lease agreement. "Happy birthday, sweetie," Mom said, her smile stretched tight across her face. "We found you a wonderful little studio apartment downtown. Rent is $800 a month, utilities included." I stared at the papers, the words swimming together. The apartment address was on Southeast Division Street, in a part of Portland I had only driven through with car doors locked. $800 was more money than I had ever seen in my life, let alone had to spend every month. "I do not understand," I said, looking up at my parents. Dad was fidgeting with his coffee mug, and Mom was arranging the salt and pepper shakers that were already perfectly aligned. "We think it is time you learn to be independent," Dad explained. "Your brother will be starting high school next year, and we want him to see what real responsibility looks like." My brother Tyler was 14 then, 2 years younger than me, and at that moment he was upstairs playing video games on the PlayStation that had appeared under the Christmas tree the year before, along with 43 games and 2 extra controllers. I had received a gift card to Target for $50. "But I am still in high school," I said. "How am I supposed to pay $800 a month?" "You will get a job," Mom said matter-of-factly. "Lots of teenagers work. It builds character." The next week, while my classmates were getting ready for junior year by shopping for new clothes and planning their class schedules around their free periods, I was walking into every restaurant, retail store, and coffee shop within a 5-mile radius of my new apartment, filling out applications. The studio was exactly as advertised, small, included utilities, and located in a building where the hallways smelled like cigarettes and industrial cleaning solution. I landed a job at Safeway, bagging groceries and collecting shopping carts from the parking lot. The manager, a tired-looking woman named Brenda with gray roots showing through her bleached hair, hired me because I was one of the few applicants who showed up to the interview on time and without visible tattoos. "You start tomorrow," she said, handing me a uniform shirt that was 2 sizes too big. 4 to 10 on weekdays, 8 to 6 on weekends. No calling in sick unless you are actually dying. That first month was the hardest thing I had ever experienced. I would wake up at 6 in the morning in my unfurnished studio, eat a bowl of generic cereal while sitting on the floor, then take 2 buses to school. After classes ended at 3:15, I would take 2 different buses to get to Safeway by 4, then work until 10 at night. By the time I got home, it was almost 11:30, and I still had homework to do. I did homework by the light of my phone because I could not afford a desk lamp yet. I slept on an air mattress from Walmart that slowly deflated every night, so I would wake up on the hard floor by morning. For the first 3 weeks, I owned 1 plate, 1 cup, 1 fork, and 1 spoon, all purchased from the dollar store. My classmates started noticing changes immediately. I fell asleep during 3rd period calculus so many times that Mr. Henderson started keeping a tally on the whiteboard. I stopped hanging out after school, stopped going to football games, stopped participating in anything that was not absolutely required for graduation. "Are you okay?" my friend Emma asked one day at lunch. She had brought sushi from home, the expensive kind from the grocery store that came in a black plastic container. I was eating a peanut butter sandwich that I had made with the cheapest bread and peanut butter I could find. "I am fine," I said, even though I was not fine. I was exhausted, stressed, and lonely in a way I had never experienced before. But I could not explain to Emma that I was living alone in a studio apartment, working 30 hours a week, and still barely making ends meet, because it sounded insane even to me. Meanwhile, Tyler was thriving at home. When I would visit on Sundays, the only day I had off work, he would tell me about his week. He had joined the chess club and was taking guitar lessons. Mom was driving him to and from school because he was not old enough for a license yet, and she would pack him elaborate lunches with sandwiches cut into triangles and little bags of his favorite chips. "How is the apartment?" Dad would ask during these visits, usually while flipping through channels on their 65-inch television. "It is good," I would lie, because what was the alternative? Admitting that I was struggling would mean admitting that their lesson in responsibility was not working, and I could see how proud they were of their parenting strategy. "We knew you could handle it," Mom would say, patting my shoulder. "You were always our little go-getter." The apartment itself was a character in my story of survival. It was located on the 3rd floor of a building that had been constructed in the 1970s and had not been updated since. The walls were thin enough that I could hear entire conversations from the units next to mine. Mrs. Rodriguez, who lived to my left, had a television that she kept at maximum volume because she was partially deaf. The college students to my right played music until 3 in the morning and had friends over every weekend who would slam doors and laugh loudly in the hallway. The kitchenette consisted of 2 burners, a mini fridge that wheezed constantly, and a microwave that was older than I was. The bathroom had a shower with water pressure so weak it felt like being misted by a spray bottle. In winter, the heating was inconsistent, so I would wake up to frost on the inside of my windows. In summer, there was no air conditioning, so I would lie awake sweating and listening to the sounds of the city below. But I adapted. Humans are remarkably adaptable creatures, and by the time I turned 17, I had developed systems that made my life manageable. I bought a coffee maker from a thrift store and learned to make coffee that was strong enough to keep me awake through my morning classes. I figured out which bus routes were most reliable and always had backup plans for getting to work. I learned to grocery shop with a calculator in my hand, planning meals around what was on sale that week. I also learned to be completely self-reliant in ways that my classmates could not imagine. When my air mattress finally gave up entirely, I saved up for 2 months to buy a used futon from Craigslist. When the microwave stopped working, I learned to heat food on the stovetop. When I got sick with the flu and missed 3 days of work, I had to choose between paying rent and buying groceries, so I lived on instant ramen and peanut butter for 2 weeks. The most difficult part was not the physical discomfort or the financial stress, though those were significant. The most difficult part was the isolation. My high school experience was completely different from everyone else's. While my friends were worrying about prom dates and college applications, I was worrying about whether I could afford to fix my uniform shirt when it tore on a shopping cart. I could not relate to their problems anymore. When Emma complained about her parents not letting her go to a party, I wanted to scream that I would give anything to have parents who cared enough about my safety to set boundaries. When Marcus talked about being stressed about choosing between 2 colleges, I envied him for having choices at all. I was going to community college because it was the only option I could afford, and even that would require me to work full-time while taking classes. Senior year was when the weight of my situation really hit me. College application season arrived, and my guidance counselor, Mrs. Patterson, called me into her office to discuss my plans. "Your grades have been inconsistent," she said, looking at my transcript over her reading glasses. "You started strong freshman year, but there has been a significant decline since junior year. Are there any issues at home that might be affecting your performance?" Issues at home. The phrase was almost funny. I did not have issues at home because I barely had a home, and the home I did have was nothing like what she was imagining. "I work a lot," I said simply. "Many students work part-time jobs," she replied, "but education should be your priority. Have you talked to your parents about reducing your hours so you can focus on your studies?" I wanted to explain that my parents were the reason I was working in the first place, that they had made independence my 16th birthday gift, and left me to figure out what that meant. But Mrs. Patterson was a nice woman who had probably never met a teenager in my situation, and I did not have the energy to educate her. "I will figure it out," I said, which was my standard response to most problems by then. The truth was that I was proud of what I had accomplished, even if it was not what anyone expected. I had kept myself housed, fed, and clothed for 2 years. I had never missed a rent payment, never been evicted, never had my utilities shut off. I had learned skills that none of my classmates possessed: how to budget down to the penny, how to negotiate with landlords, how to find the best deals on everything from groceries to laundry detergent. But I was also angry, though I did not let myself acknowledge it fully at the time. I was angry that my parents had convinced themselves that throwing me into the deep end of adulthood was somehow a gift. I was angry that they got to feel proud of themselves for teaching me responsibility while I struggled with things that no 16-year-old should have to handle alone. Most of all, I was angry about Tyler. Every time I visited home, I could see how different his experience was from mine. He had been 14 when I moved out, and now he was 16, the same age I had been when I got my manila folder birthday present. But there was no talk of independence or responsibility for Tyler. Instead, Mom and Dad had bought him a car. Not a new one, but a reliable Honda Civic that Dad had spent weekends fixing up in the garage. "We want to make sure he has reliable transportation," Mom explained when I asked about it. "It is important for young people to be able to get around safely." I had been taking public transportation for 2 years by then, including late-night buses after work that sometimes ran an hour behind schedule, leaving me waiting at bus stops in neighborhoods where I was one of the few women alone after dark. But Tyler needed reliable transportation. The car was just the beginning. Tyler had also gotten a job, but his was different from mine. He worked at a local bookstore owned by one of Dad's friends, a place where he could do homework during slow periods and never had to worry about mandatory overtime or being written up for calling in sick. His schedule was designed around his school activities and social life, not the other way around. When Tyler turned 17, I decided to ask my parents directly about the difference in our treatment. It was a Sunday dinner at their house, and we were eating Mom's famous pot roast with mashed potatoes and green beans. Tyler was telling us about his plans for senior year, which included applying to several 4-year universities. "How are you planning to pay for college?" I asked him. "Mom and Dad have been saving for my education since I was born," he said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "They have a whole college fund set up." I looked at my parents. Dad was cutting his meat with precision, not making eye contact. Mom was suddenly very interested in passing the salt, even though no one had asked for it. "I did not know about any college fund," I said carefully. "Well, we started it after you were born," Mom said. "But then we realized it was better to teach you to be self-sufficient. You are so capable, Sarah. We knew you would figure it out on your own." This was the moment I understood that my parents had not treated me differently because they thought I was more mature or responsible. They had treated me differently because they had gotten tired of parenting by the time Tyler came along, and it was easier to make me responsible for myself than to continue being responsible for me. The realization sat in my stomach like a stone for the rest of the meal. After dinner, I helped Mom clear the table while Tyler went upstairs to play video games on his computer, a gaming setup that had cost over $2,000 and had been a reward for good grades the previous Christmas. "I should get going," I said, gathering my things. I had to work early the next morning, and it would take me an hour and a half to get home on public transportation. "Do you need a ride?" Dad asked, though he was already settling into his recliner with the remote control. "I am good," I said, like I always did. As I waited at the bus stop outside their subdivision, watching the warm light from their windows, I made a decision. I was going to stop pretending that my situation was normal, or that I was grateful for the lessons in independence. I was going to start acknowledging, at least to myself, that what my parents had done was not about teaching me responsibility. It was about offloading responsibility for me onto me. But I was also going to keep going. I was 6 months away from graduating high school, and I had already been accepted to Portland Community College, with a partial scholarship based on my work experience and a personal essay about overcoming challenges. I was going to continue working at Safeway while taking classes, and I was going to build the life I wanted without any help from Robert and Linda Mitchell. What I did not know yet was that Tyler's story was just beginning, and that the difference between our experiences was about to become even more stark. What I did not know was that my parents' idea of preparing Tyler for adulthood would look nothing like the preparation they had given me. What I did not know was that I was about to discover just how much my parents were willing to spend on one child while continuing to invest nothing in the other. I graduated high school on a Tuesday in June. The ceremony was held at the Moda Center downtown, the same arena where the Trailblazers played basketball. My parents came, sitting in the nosebleed sections with hundreds of other families, and afterward we went to Applebee's for dinner. Tyler ordered the most expensive thing on the menu, a $24 steak, while I got a $12 pasta dish and ate half of it so I could take the rest home for lunch the next day. "We are so proud of you," Mom said over dessert, which was a piece of chocolate cake that Tyler and Dad shared while Mom and I watched. "You have really shown us what determination looks like." I smiled and thanked them, but inside I was calculating whether I could afford to miss a day of work for my graduation. The answer was no, so I had requested the morning off and promised Brenda I would be there by 2 in the afternoon, still wearing my cap and gown if necessary. Community college was different from what I had expected. I enrolled in business classes because they seemed practical, and I figured that understanding accounting and management might help me eventually move beyond bagging groceries. The campus was small and utilitarian, with buildings that looked like they had been designed by someone who thought education should feel like a municipal office building. Most of my classmates were older than me, people in their 30s and 40s who were going back to school to change careers or finish degrees they had started years earlier. I liked this. They took the classes seriously because they were paying for them themselves, and they did not waste time with the social drama that had defined high school. I also liked my professors, especially Dr. Martinez, who taught Introduction to Business Management. She was a small woman with graying hair who had run her own consulting firm for 15 years before deciding to teach. During our first class, she asked each student to introduce themselves and explain why they were there. When it was my turn, I said, "My name is Sarah Mitchell. I am 18 years old, and I am here because I want to understand how businesses work so I can eventually run one myself." "What kind of business?" she asked. I had not thought about this before, but suddenly I knew. "Property management," I said. "I want to help people find good places to live at prices they can actually afford." Dr. Martinez nodded approvingly. "That is a worthy goal. The housing market needs more people who understand what it is like to struggle with rent." Balancing school and work was exhausting, but it was a different kind of exhausting than high school had been. In high school, I had felt like I was drowning, trying to keep up with assignments while working enough hours to survive. In college, I felt like I was building something. Every class taught me something I could use, and every shift at Safeway was getting me closer to my degree. I had also been promoted. Brenda had moved to a different store, and the new manager, Kevin, had noticed that I was reliable and good with customers. He offered me a position in customer service, which meant I got to work behind the counter instead of in the parking lot. The pay was $2 more per hour, and I got to wear business casual clothes instead of the polo shirt uniform. "You have management potential," Kevin told me during my performance review. "Have you ever thought about retail as a career?" I thanked him but did not mention that retail was my stepping stone, not my destination. Kevin was a decent manager, but he had been working at Safeway for 12 years and still got excited about employee appreciation pizza parties. I wanted more than that. The first sign that Tyler's path would be different from mine came during his senior year of high school. I was visiting for Sunday dinner, as had become my routine, when Dad announced that they had hired a college consultant to help Tyler with his applications. "A college consultant?" I asked. "Dr. Rebecca Steinberg," Mom said proudly. "She specializes in helping students get into competitive programs. She charges $300 an hour, but she has a 92% success rate for getting her clients into their first-choice schools." I did some quick math in my head. If Dr. Steinberg was working with Tyler for even 10 hours, that was $3,000, more than I made in 2 months at Safeway. "What does she do exactly?" I asked. "She helps with everything," Tyler said. "Essay writing, interview preparation, choosing which schools to apply to. She even has connections with admissions officers at different universities." I thought about my own college application process, which had consisted of me filling out forms online during my breaks at work and writing my personal essay on my phone while waiting for the bus. I had applied to Portland Community College and Portland State University, and that was it. I could not afford application fees for multiple schools, and I certainly could not afford a consultant. "That sounds expensive," I said carefully. "It is an investment in Tyler's future," Dad replied. "Education is the most important thing we can give him." The irony was staggering. Education was apparently the most important thing they could give Tyler, but they had given me a lease agreement and told me to figure it out myself. Over the next few months, I heard regular updates about Tyler's college preparation. Dr. Steinberg had recommended that he apply to 12 different schools, including several private universities that cost over $50,000 per year. She had helped him craft essays that highlighted his unique perspective and leadership potential. She had arranged for him to have interviews with alumni from his top-choice schools. Meanwhile, I was taking 4 classes per semester at community college and working 35 hours per week to pay for tuition, rent, and living expenses. I was doing well academically, mostly A's and B's, but I was too tired to participate in any extracurricular activities or networking opportunities that might have helped with my future career. The difference became even more apparent when Tyler started getting acceptance letters. He got into 10 of the 12 schools he applied to, including Oregon State University, University of Washington, and his dream school, University of Colorado Boulder. Boulder offered him a partial academic scholarship, Mom announced during one of our Sunday dinners. But even with the scholarship, it will still cost about $35,000 per year. Are you going to be able to afford that? I asked. Dad and Mom exchanged a look. We have been saving for Tyler's education since he was born, Dad said. Plus, we can help him apply for student loans and work-study programs. We want to make sure he has every opportunity to succeed. I wanted to ask why they had not been saving for my education since I was born, but I already knew the answer. They had decided when I was 16 that my path to success was different from Tyler's, and they had stuck to that decision even as it became clear how much harder my path was. Tyler chose University of Colorado Boulder, partly because of the academic program, and partly because he wanted to learn to snowboard. He would be studying business administration with a focus on marketing, and he was excited about joining the entrepreneurship club and maybe starting his own company someday. I was proud of him, genuinely proud. Tyler was smart and ambitious, and he deserved good opportunities. But I was also frustrated by how easy his path seemed compared to mine. He had never had to choose between buying textbooks and buying groceries. He had never fallen asleep during class, because he had worked until midnight the night before. He had never had to turn down social opportunities, because he could not afford them. During Tyler's graduation party, held in my parents' backyard with catered food and relatives I had not seen in years, I found myself standing alone by the fence, watching everyone celebrate. Uncle Mike, Dad's brother, came over to talk to me. "How are you doing, Sarah?" he asked. "I heard you are in college now, too." "Community college," I clarified. "I am studying business management." "That is great," he said. "Are you planning to transfer to a 4-year school?" "Eventually," I said. "I need to finish my associate degree first and save up some money." Uncle Mike nodded, but I could see the confusion in his eyes. He was probably wondering why I was taking such a roundabout path to my education, especially when my parents were clearly able to afford a more direct route for Tyler. "Well, good for you for working so hard," he said finally. "Your parents must be proud of how independent you are." Independent. That word again. It had become the family's explanation for everything about my situation. Sarah is so independent. Sarah likes to do things herself. Sarah is learning valuable life lessons. But independence was not something I had chosen. It was something that had been chosen for me, and I was making the best of it because I did not have any other options. After Tyler left for Boulder in August, I thought maybe my relationship with my parents would change. With their primary focus no longer living at home, maybe they would have more time and attention for me. Maybe they would start to see me as their daughter again instead of their successful independence experiment. Instead, the opposite happened. With Tyler gone, my parents seemed to have more energy to spend on him than ever before. They called him every other day to check on his classes and his social life. They sent him care packages filled with his favorite snacks and warm clothes for the Colorado winter. They planned to visit him for family weekend in October. When I mentioned that I was thinking about transferring to Portland State University after finishing my associate degree, Mom's response was lukewarm at best. "That sounds nice, honey," she said. "Make sure you research the financial aid options thoroughly." No offers to help with tuition. No discussions about how they could support my education. Just a reminder that I was responsible for figuring out my own financial aid. It was around this time that I started to understand the true scope of what my parents were willing to do for Tyler versus what they were willing to do for me. Tyler called home one evening in October, and I happened to be visiting when he was on speakerphone. "I am thinking about changing my major," he said. "Business administration is kind of boring. I am more interested in environmental science now." "That sounds wonderful," Mom said immediately. "Environmental science is such an important field. The only thing is, it might take me an extra semester to graduate if I switch now," Tyler continued. "Is that okay?" "Of course it is okay," Dad said. "We want you to study something you are passionate about. We can extend your funding to cover the extra semester." Extend his funding. I had never had any funding to extend. When I had considered changing my major from business to social work, I had ultimately decided against it because it would have required taking additional prerequisite classes that I could not afford. But the real revelation came a few months later when Tyler called with bigger news. "I got an internship opportunity for the summer," he said during another speakerphone call. "It is with the environmental consulting firm in Denver. The only thing is, it is unpaid, and I would need to find housing in Denver for 3 months. I expected my parents to tell Tyler that he would need to find a paying job for the summer, like most college students do. Instead, Dad's response floored me. "An unpaid internship sounds like a great opportunity for experience," he said. "We can help you with rent and living expenses for the summer." "Really?" Tyler asked. "Absolutely," Mom chimed in. "Internships are so important for career development. How much do you think you would need?" "Probably around $2,000 per month for rent and food," Tyler said. "So $6,000 total." "We can do that," Dad said without hesitation. $6,000. My parents were willing to pay $6,000 so that Tyler could work for free in Denver, but they had never offered me a single dollar to help with rent, tuition, or living expenses in the 6 years since I had moved out. After Tyler hung up, I sat in their living room trying to process what I had just heard. My parents were planning to spend $6,000 so that Tyler could have the luxury of working an unpaid internship, while I had been working paid jobs since I was 16 because I had no choice. "That is really generous of you," I said finally. "We just want to make sure Tyler has every advantage," Mom said. "These early career experiences are so important." I wanted to ask what advantages I had been given, but I already knew the answer. My advantage was supposed to be independence. My advantage was supposed to be the character-building experience of figuring everything out myself. But as I sat there in their comfortable living room, surrounded by the furniture and decorations that Tyler had grown up with, I realized that my parents' definition of advantage was very different, depending on which child they were talking about. That night, I went home to my apartment and made a list of everything my parents had paid for Tyler since I had moved out versus everything they had paid for me. Tyler's list included car repairs, insurance, cell phone bill, college tuition, room and board, textbooks, care packages, visits to Colorado, and now summer housing for an unpaid internship. My list was blank. I was not asking for charity. I had proven that I could take care of myself, and I was proud of what I had accomplished. But I was starting to understand that my parents' pride in my independence was actually pride in their own lack of responsibility for me. The situation with Tyler was about to get even more complex, though, because while I was working full-time and going to school part-time, slowly making progress toward my degree, Tyler was about to graduate college and enter the next phase of his life. And my parents' plan for launching Tyler into adulthood was going to make their 16th birthday gift to me look like small change. I just did not know it yet. Tyler graduated from University of Colorado Boulder on a Saturday in May. I took the day off work to drive up with my parents for the ceremony, which was held in the university's football stadium under a brilliant blue sky. The Rocky Mountains formed a dramatic backdrop as hundreds of graduates walked across the stage in their caps and gowns. I felt genuinely happy watching Tyler receive his diploma. Despite everything, I loved my brother, and I was proud of what he had accomplished. He had maintained a 3.7 grade point average while being involved in multiple student organizations. He had completed 2 internships, including the one in Denver that my parents had funded. He looked confident and optimistic as he posed for photos with Mom and Dad afterward. "What is next for you?" I asked him as we walked across campus to the parking lot. "I am not sure yet," he said. "I have been interviewing for entry-level positions with environmental consulting firms in Portland and Seattle. Dr. Steinberg thinks I should take some time to really evaluate my options before committing to anything." Dr. Steinberg was still in the picture, apparently. Even after college graduation, My parents were still paying $300 an hour for career guidance that most 22-year-olds figure out themselves. That sounds smart, I said. Are you planning to move back home while you job hunt? Actually, no, Tyler said. Mom and Dad think it would be better for me to have my own place. They found me an apartment in the Pearl District. The Pearl District was one of the most expensive neighborhoods in Portland, full of converted warehouse lofts and upscale condominiums. I had walked through it sometimes on my days off, window shopping at boutiques I could never afford, and restaurants where a single meal cost more than I spent on groceries in a week. That must be expensive, I said. It is not too bad, Tyler replied casually. Plus, Mom and Dad are helping with rent for the first year while I get established in my career. I felt something cold settle in my stomach, but I tried to keep my voice neutral. How much is the rent? $2,800 a month, Tyler said. But it is a really nice one-bedroom with amazing views of the river. You should come see it once I move in. $2,800. My rent was still $1,200, and I had been living in the same studio apartment for 6 years because I could not afford to move anywhere better. Tyler was getting an apartment that cost more than twice my rent, in the nicest part of the city, and our parents were paying for it. When do you move in? I asked. Next week, Tyler said. Mom and Dad hired movers to transport my stuff from Boulder, and they also hired an interior designer to furnish the place. They want to make sure I have everything I need to focus on my job search. An interior designer. They had hired an interior designer to furnish Tyler's apartment, while I was still eating off paper plates, because I could not afford a matching set of dishes. The ride home from Colorado was quiet. I sat in the back seat while my parents talked excitedly about Tyler's future and their plans for helping him get settled in Portland. I stared out the window at the passing landscape and tried to process what I had learned. My parents were about to spend more money on Tyler's first month of independent living than they had spent on me in 6 years. They were giving him the kind of financial support that would have changed my entire life if it had been offered to me at 18 or even at 22. A week later, Tyler called to invite me to see his new apartment. I took the bus downtown after work on a Thursday evening, still wearing my customer service uniform from Safeway. The building was a sleek glass tower with a doorman and a lobby that looked like a hotel. You must be Sarah, the doorman said when I approached his desk. Tyler mentioned you were coming by. He is in Unit 1207. The elevator was fast and silent, opening onto a hallway with thick carpeting and modern light fixtures. Tyler's apartment was at the end of the hall, and when he opened the door, I stepped into a space that looked like it belonged in a magazine. The living room had floor-to-ceiling windows with panoramic views of the Willamette River and the city skyline. The furniture was all coordinated: a gray sectional sofa, a glass coffee table, a dining table with 6 matching chairs. The kitchen had granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, and a wine refrigerator. Everything was perfectly arranged, from the throw pillows on the couch to the artwork on the walls. What do you think? Tyler asked, clearly proud of the space. It is beautiful, I said, and I meant it. It was beautiful. It was also completely overwhelming. Tyler gave me a tour of the entire apartment. The bedroom had a king-size bed with a headboard that matched the dresser and nightstands. The bathroom had a rainfall shower and a soaking tub. There was even a walk-in closet that was bigger than my entire studio apartment. The interior designer did an amazing job, Tyler said as we concluded the tour. Her name is Patricia Chen, and she specializes in urban professional spaces. Mom found her through a referral from Dr. Steinberg. Of course she did. Dr. Steinberg apparently had connections for everything. How much did all of this cost? I asked, gesturing around the living room. I am not sure exactly, Tyler said. Mom and Dad handled all the financial stuff. They said they wanted my first apartment to feel like home so I could focus on building my career instead of worrying about furniture shopping and decorating. I sat down on the expensive sofa and looked out at the river view. In 6 years of living independently, I had never once had my parents ask if I needed help with furniture, decorating, or anything else related to making my apartment feel like home. They had never expressed concern about whether I could focus on building my career. This is really generous of them, I said. I know, Tyler agreed. I feel really lucky. They have been so supportive through everything. Lucky. That was one way to put it. I stayed for about an hour, listening to Tyler talk about his job interviews and his plans for the future. He was optimistic and confident. And why would not he be? He had graduated college debt-free, moved into a luxury apartment that he did not have to pay for. and had parents who were funding his job search so he could take his time finding the perfect position. When I got home that night, I sat in my studio apartment and looked around with new eyes. My furniture was a mismatched collection of items I had accumulated over 6 years. The used futon from Craigslist, a small table I had found at a garage sale, a bookshelf made of boards and cinder blocks. My dishes were a combination of items from the dollar store and a few nicer pieces I had bought one at a time when they were on sale. My decorations consisted of a few photographs I had printed at the drugstore and some plants I had grown from seeds because I could not afford to buy them fully grown. For 6 years, I had been proud of what I had built for myself. I had taken pride in my resourcefulness, my ability to make something from nothing, my independence. But sitting there that night, I realized that my pride had been based on a false premise. I had been proud of succeeding despite having no help, but I had never questioned why I had needed to succeed without help in the first place. The next few weeks were when everything came to a head. Tyler found a job with an environmental consulting firm in Portland, a position that paid $60,000 per year plus benefits. It was exactly the kind of opportunity he had been hoping for, and my parents were thrilled. To celebrate, they decided to throw Tyler a housewarming/new job party at his apartment. They invited extended family friends, and some of Tyler's college buddies who were in town. They hired a caterer and bought several bottles of champagne. I was invited, of course, but I almost did not go. The idea of standing in Tyler's luxury apartment, watching our parents celebrate the success that they had made possible through their financial support, felt like more than I could handle. But Tyler had asked me specifically to be there, and I did not want to punish him for our parents' choices. The party was exactly what I had expected. About 30 people crowded into Tyler's beautiful apartment, eating catered food and toasting his bright future. Uncle Mike was there, along with several of Dad's colleagues from Nike and some of Mom's friends from the dental practice. Tyler is so fortunate to have such supportive parents, I heard one of Mom's friends say. It makes such a difference when young people have a strong foundation to build from. I was standing near the kitchen island, holding a glass of champagne that I was not drinking, because alcohol on an empty stomach seemed like a bad idea. I had not eaten much of the catered food because I felt too anxious to have an appetite. "Sarah, how are you doing?" asked Mrs. Peterson, a woman who had been friends with Mom since I was in elementary school. "I am good," I said automatically. "I heard you are in college," she said. "What are you studying?" "Business management," I said. "I'm getting my associate degree at Portland Community College, and then I plan to transfer to Portland State." "That is wonderful," she said. "Are you living at home while you go to school?" This was the question I had been avoiding all evening. "No, I have my own apartment," I said. "How nice," Mrs. Peterson said. "It must be helpful to have your parents' support while you are getting your education." I could have corrected her. I could have explained that I had been living independently since I was 16, that I had been paying my own rent and tuition for 6 years, that my parents had not provided any financial support for my housing or education. But what would have been the point? Mrs. Peterson would have been shocked and confused, and it would have created an awkward situation for everyone. "Yes," I said instead. "I am very grateful." The conversation that changed everything happened about an hour later. I was in Tyler's bedroom, looking at a framed photograph of him at his college graduation, when I overheard my parents talking to Uncle Mike in the living room. "You have really done an amazing job with both kids," Uncle Mike was saying. "They are both so successful and independent." "We are proud of them," Dad replied. "We always believed in giving them what they needed to succeed. Tyler's apartment is incredible," Uncle Mike continued. "You must have spent a fortune getting him set up." "It was worth every penny," Mom said. "We want him to have the best possible start to his adult life. The first few years after college are so important for establishing yourself professionally." "What about Sarah?" Uncle Mike asked. "Is she still living in that little apartment downtown?" There was a brief pause. "Sarah has always been different," Mom said. "She is much more independent than Tyler. She actually prefers to do things herself. We offered to help her when she first moved out, but she insisted on handling everything on her own." This was a lie. A complete, unambiguous lie. My parents had never offered to help me with anything. They had handed me a lease agreement on my 16th birthday and told me to figure it out. "That is impressive," Uncle Mike said. "Not many teenagers could handle that kind of responsibility." "We knew Sarah could handle it," Dad said. "She has always been our little go-getter." Tyler is more sensitive, more artistic. He needs more guidance and support. I stood in Tyler's bedroom, listening to my parents rewrite history in real time. According to their version of events, I had chosen independence while Tyler had needed support. I had refused their help while Tyler had accepted it gratefully. I was strong and capable while Tyler was delicate and artistic. None of this was true. What was true was that they had decided when I was 16 that it was easier to stop parenting me than to continue parenting me. What was true was that they had chosen to invest their time, energy, and money in Tyler while expecting me to invest in myself. But even more infuriating than the lie was the fact that they seemed to genuinely believe it. They had convinced themselves that their treatment of me had been my choice, that their neglect had been my preference. I walked back into the living room and stood there for a moment, looking at the party. Tyler was talking excitedly with some of his college friends about his new job. Mom and Dad were beaming with pride, accepting congratulations from their friends on what good parents they were. Everyone was celebrating the success story of a young man who had been given every possible advantage and had used those advantages well. And I was standing there in my Safeway uniform, having taken public transportation to get there, watching my parents lie about why I had not been given the same advantages. That was when I decided I was done. I walked over to where my parents were standing with Uncle Mike and a few other family friends. "Can I talk to you both for a minute?" I asked. "Of course, honey," Mom said. "What is it?" "I overheard you telling Uncle Mike that you offered to help me when I first moved out, but that I insisted on handling everything myself," I said. "That is not what happened." Dad looked uncomfortable. "Sarah, this is not really the time or place." "When is the time and place?" I asked. "Because we have never actually talked about this. We have never acknowledged what really happened when I turned 16. Mom glanced around nervously. "You are being dramatic, sweetie. Let us discuss this later." "I am not being dramatic," I said, and I could hear my voice getting louder. "I am being honest. You did not offer to help me when I moved out. You handed me a lease agreement and told me to get a job. You did not give me a choice about being independent. You made me independent because it was easier than continuing to be responsible for me." "That is not fair," Dad said. "We were teaching you valuable life skills." "You were teaching Tyler valuable life skills too," I said. "Except his lessons involved college consultants and interior designers, and paying his rent while he job hunts. My lessons involved working 30 hours a week in high school and eating ramen noodles for dinner because I could not afford anything else." The conversation around us had stopped. People were staring, but I did not care anymore. "You spent more money on Tyler's furniture than you have spent on me in 6 years," I continued. "You paid for his college education while I worked full-time to pay for community college classes. You hired him a career consultant while I figured out my future by myself. And now you are standing here telling people that this was my choice, that I preferred to do things myself." "You did prefer to do things yourself," Mom said, but her voice was shaky. "You were always so independent, even as a child." "I was independent because I had to be," I said. "I was independent because you stopped taking care of me when I was 16 years old, and I did not have any other choice." Tyler had walked over during this conversation, looking confused and concerned. "What is going on?" he asked. "I am just explaining to Mom and Dad that their version of our childhood is not accurate," I said to him. "I am explaining that the reason my life has been harder than yours is not because I chose independence, but because they chose to stop supporting me." "Sarah," Tyler said quietly, "maybe we should talk about this privately." "Why?" I asked. "So they can continue to tell people that they offered me help and I turned it down? So they can keep pretending that giving you every advantage while giving me none was somehow fair?" I looked around the room at all the people staring at us. Uncle Mike looked shocked. Mrs. Peterson had her hand over her mouth. Mom's friends from the dental practice were exchanging glances. "I am not angry at you, Tyler," I said to my brother. "You deserve every opportunity they have given you. You deserve to have parents who support your education and your career and your dreams. Every young person deserves that." I turned back to my parents. "But I deserved it too. And the fact that you convinced yourselves that I did not want it, that I was somehow better off without it, does not make what you did okay." Dad opened his mouth to respond, but I held up my hand. "I am done," I said. "I am done pretending that this is normal. I am done being grateful for being abandoned. I am done listening to you take credit for my success when my success happened despite you. Not because of you. I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. Tyler, I'm proud of you, I said. I hope you have an amazing career and a wonderful life. You deserve all of this. Then I looked at my parents one more time. And I deserved it too. I left the party and took the bus home to my studio apartment. I sat on my used futon and looked around at my mismatched furniture and my dollar store dishes and my life that I had built entirely by myself, without any help from anyone. For the first time in 6 years, I let myself cry about it. I cried for the 16-year-old girl who had been handed a lease agreement instead of a birthday present. I cried for the high school student who had fallen asleep in class because she was working 30 hours a week. I cried for the college student who had missed networking opportunities because she was bagging groceries. But mostly, I cried for the daughter who had been abandoned by parents, who then convinced themselves that the abandonment had been her choice. After I finished crying, I made a decision. I was going to transfer to Portland State University in the fall, even if it meant taking on student loan debt. I was going to finish my bachelor's degree in business management, and then I was going to start my own property management company. I was going to help people find good housing at affordable prices, and I was going to make sure that no one in my buildings ever had to choose between paying rent and buying groceries. I was going to build the life I wanted, not because my parents had taught me independence, but because they had taught me that I could not depend on anyone but myself. 3 days later, Tyler called me. Sarah, I am so sorry, he said. I had no idea that Mom and Dad had not helped you at all. I thought you had just chosen to live on your own. It is not your fault, I told him. They told you the same lie they told everyone else. What can I do? He asked. How can I make this better? You do not need to make anything better, I said. You did not do anything wrong. Mom and Dad made their choices, and now I am making mine. Are you going to stop talking to them? I thought about this. I do not know yet, I said honestly. I need some time to figure out what kind of relationship I want to have with people who could lie so easily about something so important. Tyler was quiet for a moment. For what it is worth, he said finally, you are the strongest person I know. What you have accomplished is incredible. Thank you, I said. That means a lot. A month later, I enrolled at Portland State University as a full-time student. I took out student loans to cover tuition and reduced my hours at Safeway to part-time so I could focus on my studies. It was scary to take on debt after 6 years of living completely within my means, but I realized that my fear of debt was just another way that my early experiences had limited my options. My parents called a few times after the party, but I did not answer. They left voicemails apologizing for the misunderstanding and asking me to call them back so we could work things out. But there was no misunderstanding to clear up. There was only the truth that they had abandoned me and then lied about it, and I was not ready to pretend otherwise. I am 24 now, finishing my bachelor's degree and preparing to start my own business. I still live in a small apartment and drive a used car and buy my clothes from thrift stores. But these are choices now, not necessities. I am building the life I want on my own terms, and that feels different from surviving because I have no other options. Sometimes I think about what my life might have been like if my parents had supported me the way they supported Tyler. I might have gone to a 4-year university straight out of high school. I might have been able to focus on my studies instead of working. I might have had opportunities for internships and study abroad and all the experiences that college is supposed to provide. But I also know that the person I am now, resourceful, independent, empathetic to others who struggle, was shaped by the experiences I had. I am not grateful for those experiences, but I am proud of how I handled them. And I know that when I have children someday, I will never make them choose between having my support and learning independence. Because real independence is not about being abandoned and told to figure it out yourself. Real independence is about having a strong foundation of support that gives you the confidence to build your own life. My parents taught me what not to do as a parent. Tyler's story taught me what children deserve from their parents. And my own story taught me that sometimes the most important lesson is learning that you deserve better than what you got, and then making sure you create better for yourself and others. I am still building that better life, one choice at a time. And for the first time in 8 years, I am doing it not because I have to, but because I want to.